the Open Podcast, where your host, Sander Mangel, and his guests share strategies and insights to help digital agencies thrive in a changing world.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. This show is for forward-thinking digital agencies who want to stay sharp, grow smarter, and adapt to the ever-ending world of web and commerce. I'm Katie Wilson, Partnerships Manager and Enablement Specialist.
I'm Sander Mangel, Solutions Architect, Consultant, and founder of Open Commerce. We'll be diving into the key topics that affect agencies today, from pre-sales and project delivery to tech stack strategy and scaling.
And in this first episode, we're talking about something that we feel sits at the very heart of every successful project, which is specifically how to run effective pre-sales meetings.
We've both seen what works and definitely what doesn't when it comes to close those early conversations with clients. So today we're sharing practical tips, our real-world experiences, and some simple ways to tighten up your pre-sales process without sounding like a robot or going through a script every time.
Exactly. So let's get into it. So we're going to start off today by talking about what exactly is a pre-sales meeting. And we're going to start with the basics. So what is it? What is a pre-sales meeting? Because I think that actually people get really confused with it and think it's just a pitch.
Exactly. I think a pre-sales meeting isn't just about selling your agency, right? It's final to introduce yourself, tell a little about yourself, your origin story, what have you. But that should be one slide maximum. It's about discovery, getting to know who's sitting across you at the table, and it's about understanding if you are a good fit and if the project is a good fit, if the client is ready, and if your team is actually the right one to deliver the project, right? Are you able to satisfy all of their requirements? Are you even willing to?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's about qualification and alignment. And to your point, it isn't necessarily flexing your muscles and just showing off your specific capabilities. I think a lot of the time people aren't always asking the right questions or gathering context behind the specific project, because ultimately we want to make sure that you're there to solve that problem. So with the qualification alignment, it's a chance to demonstrate value before you start scoping.
Yeah, that's a good point, Katie. I fully agree. I think a lot of agencies go in thinking that they want to deliver a product, right? I have done Shopify, Magento, Shopware, BigCommerce, any of the above projects before. This is how I approach this. I've done it before for fashion or B2B or whatever. So I'm going to tell the client how they should be running this project. And quite frankly, often that is not what a client wants to hear, right? They want to explain to you how they are completely unique and how they need something bespoke. And while that might not be always the case, to be honest, right? I do think it's valid to listen to them, because they will tell you how they want to be sold to, right? They will tell you a lot about internal politics of the company. They will explain to you what is important to them, what isn't important to them, where their value lies. I think what I've found very helpful is to use a framework. There are definitely a lot of them. Bandmatic. There's one from HubSpot that I keep forgetting. GPCTI, couple of letters. There's Champ. We've worked with that together, right? Especially in the Nordics. So maybe let's have a look at that one. That is challenges, authority, money, and prioritization. And I think those four topics, four is basically what all of them turn around, right? It's more or less always the same. So what are they trying to solve? What are their goals? The authority, so person that you are speaking to, are they authorized to actually make that decision, to sign off on it? Or are they going to turn around and go to their CEO, CFO, what have you, and have to sell it internally, which is still fine, right? That's most of the conversations that you're probably having. But then you need to make sure that you are enabling them to do that selling internally, because most people do not know how to sell projects internally. Right,
No.
That's a problem.
Or they're speaking to the wrong stakeholder.
Right, exactly. And then money, I have yet to find a client that tells me exactly what budget they have, but I think there's a couple of indicators, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all,
champagne goals and a lemonade budget. That's a bit of a red.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's good to understand how much revenue are they making online, right? Because if they are making, I don't know, 1.5 million in revenue online, they're not probably going to spend, $500,000 on their web shop unless they have very big dreams. So I think already understanding their online revenue, maybe asking about their last big digital transformation or replatforming effort, right? Have they done one for their ERP system? Or for an inventory management system already gives you a little bit of an idea. Even asking their annual IT budget might help, right? So there are different questions to be asked to kind of understand that. And then I think the next one is prioritization. And that one is tricky because for a lot of people that we're talking to, right, for the CMO, you're talking to the marketing officer. And he's like, no, this is top priority. If we don't do this, we're not going to hit our revenue goals, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? He has wildly different priorities from the rest of the company, right? Because the finance department knows that they still need to upgrade their ERP system. The CEO knows that they're going to have to invest in a new warehouse. So I think in general, what I love to have clients or leads do as well is walk me a little bit through their roadmap for the year, kind of understand what is on their radar for this year, what do they want to deliver on, what are some of the targets that they have set, and then kind of figuring out myself how a web shop or any kind of project kind of fits into that in terms of priorities.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. Are they
most
just
clients,
exploring or where it actually sits on their priority list for sure?
yeah, exactly. And then, figuring out if it's absolutely critical, if they're even ready to deliver this next quarter, right? Because a lot of them want it fast. But if you're also doing, I don't know, a major overhaul of your branding, you're probably not going to even have time to
Yeah.
deliver it fast.
I think what I like about Champ as well is client focused. You're not trying to qualify them out. You're really trying to understand their context and make sure it's the right time, the right team and investment level. One question that I've always liked to ask, or specifically under the challenge, is if you were to look back and revisit this project in the next 6 months, what would have needed to have changed in order for you to either progress this project or feel like this project is moving in the right direction? Because I think that really teases out pain points and goals. And I think if you can cover most of Champ in that pre-sales meeting, you will definitely come away with more clarity, not just for the client, but for your team too, because it avoids many internal headaches a bit later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also to your point on teasing out some of the stuff, right? Once you start to work with these frameworks, you know when you're being questioned on them, right? And I think that is also a skill that people need to develop, to not have a checklist right in front of them and ask them, what is your budget, right? It is, letting the client talk. And while the client is speaking and talking about their company, their hopes, dreams, wishes, priorities, nightmares, what have you, go into some of those details and try to, like you said, tease out the answers that you need, right? And they're not going to give you a clear-cut answer in one go, right? That never happens. You need to drill deeper. You need to ask the facts behind the facts. Why do they want this? All right. But explain to me, what's the reason that happened? And I think that is a skill you can only develop by doing this way too many times.
For sure. And as you say, effective listening rather than a checklist where you're just focused on preparing the next question. That's not going to deliver the same outcomes. But on that note, then, I guess we can then flip to what common mistakes that we see agencies make and talk about kind of what goes wrong. Because to your point, over the time, we've both seen plenty of these pre-sales meetings that go flat, but there's typically some mistakes that we're seeing agencies make.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think mistake number one, and we already talked a little bit about that, is people or agencies talking too much, right? Being proud of all that they have accomplished, and rightfully so, but wanting to throw that in the face of the client and shout at them, look at what I've done. Give me a bag of money and I'll fix this for you, right? That is not the purpose of that meeting. Again, if anything, it should be one slide. Who are you? Who are you as an agency? Who are you as a person? What makes you somewhat qualified to be in that room? And after that, just shut up and let them do the talking, right? It's that is the most important thing. And think about the story that you want them to tell. So I have some questions ready, maybe some anecdotes from the industry, or ask them. I work with one of your competitors, and they face this and this challenge. Have you faced that as well? Right? And it doesn't even have to be on a tech level. Right? I work with a promotional printing company. Um, where I learned a lot of the intricacies of the business. So the next time I spoke to a promotional printing company, I could ask them, okay, well, how do you deal with suppliers and print positions and what have you? And even if it wasn't too relevant to the tech, to the solution, it got them talking. It made them feel comfortable that I at least had some understanding of the industry. So I think it only takes a couple of words to send them off and have them tell all of their secrets.
Completely. And people do feel more comfortable oftentimes when others are in the same boat. Like it's not then just their challenge and others are facing it. And they can also then learn from how others have improved it and then go one further. I think one of the biggest traps that I've seen, and I have seen this personally a lot, is where agencies will often go in and they predetermine before the discovery, before the workshop, they've gone in and they pitched the solution before even understanding the problem. So, for example, they've gone straight in and said, let's use this particular technology. So whether that's Magento or Shopify or let's go headless, and you haven't at that point uncovered the business goals. And so you're probably going to miss the mark on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so infuriating how companies already come in with a predetermined, and at the same time I get it, right? Because you are a Shopify agency, so guess what? You're going to do Shopify, and I get that. And I think a lot of projects can be done on just about any platform, but just already pushing the client into that direction I think it even undermines to some extent your credibility as an agency, right? Because you're just telling the client that you're going to use the same cookie cutter solution, which they don't want to hear. Absolutely not. They want to feel special, Katie. They want to feel special. Yeah, and I think another one that I see a lot is forgetting or the champ basics, right? So not asking about that budget or not trying to understand what the authority of the person you're speaking to is. The times that I've walked out of pre-sales meetings where the sales guy is like, it's such a good, I feel there was a connection. I'm like, dude, you just sold to like an intern that had to, figure out 4 different kinds of platforms to do a potential build on, right? That personal connection, yes, that's very important. But is that the person that's going to make the decision? Probably not, right? So you need to build relationships with the whole of the company and understand what their motivation is. And probably there's a myriad of reasons why or why not they want to go through with this project, right? For the CFO, it's different than for the CMO or the CSO. So I think, yeah, the authority is important. Timeline, right? The client will always say, I need this soon or fast or now or even yesterday. But trying to tease out, why and what are some of the major events? Are they indexing on any, Black Fridays coming up that they need to put a lot of effort behind? I think that is very
Completely. I agree with that one entirely. And I think that's also leads on to what your follow-up's going to be, because oftentimes there will just be something really vague. For example, okay, well, we'll be in touch, but that's not clear. You really need to define the follow-up. So that could be, for example, that we'll be sending you a proposal by this time next week, or just a bit more detail, because often that will then derail or end a potential sale if you do not get that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe to that point, another thing that people are forgetting is that you actually need to prepare, right? It's not like you just walk into that meeting and give it all you got. You need to come prepared. So maybe to transition into what makes a pre-sales meeting effective, I think doing that preparation, understanding your client, understanding, have a look at their website, have a look at their latest news releases and that kind of stuff. See what the leadership is talking about on LinkedIn. I think all of those are very important to have clear before you ever walk into that first meeting or call.
Completely, yeah. So as you say, you have your structure, you have an agenda, but you don't need to read it like a script. So it does help you to guide the conversation. And I think some of those steps there with business goals, pain point, technical background, timeline, budget, next step, I think those things are really gold. So it's about balancing discovery but also showcasing you and the agency's expertise. You're there to listen, but you have got many clients that have been in that similar position. You can speak to those pain points. You know how to be able to work with that client, but you need to give them that sense of confidence as well. And also a sense of what working with you and your particular agency would feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to have a structure when you walk in, right? So while you maybe have a pitch deck with a couple of slides, I think you need to think out the whole story that you want to tell. Some of the things that I like to include is maybe first some, quick intros. What I like to do is to repeat basically what I already know about the client and the ask, right? Just to make sure that our expectations of the meeting and what we're starting with are clear. I like to have them tell a little bit about themselves, the company, the team that is working on this replatforming, digital transformation, what have you. I asked them who is sponsoring this project, right? Especially in the leadership team and why they are sponsoring this. So kind of tease out that whole origin story to understand what the authority is that they have, or maybe even already some of the prioritization that is important. Then I like to ask them a little bit about the goals and the challenges, right? So what are they trying to achieve, and not just launch a new web shop. No, why? What is this in the grand scheme of things in your sales strategy? Why do you want to fit this into your roadmap? Some of the challenges that they foresee, both technical and non-technical, of course, and how they propose to tackle those challenges. I think it's interesting to ask them for solutions as well, right? Some of the success metrics that they like to include. So what are they being judged on? What do they need to deliver? Is it within a certain budget or a certain timeline? Do they need to reach a certain conversion level or new leads, or, what? It's already interesting to understand if they want to attract net new customers or if they are focusing on more recurring sales, right? A very basic question to ask. I try to tease out some of the budget that they have for this, but it's always challenging. So understanding a little bit better their spending pattern, the potential revenue there is, that is very important. And then I think prioritization. So paint a little bit of a roadmap, ask them if they would feel comfortable with that roadmap, if that would fit into their planning, right? Your average replatforming easily takes 9 months or more from start to finish. So I think they need to understand that takes time also internally to create the content, to fill the content into the web shop, to think about the design, to all of that. So that needs to fit in. And then I think normally where I end up with is next steps, right? We had that call. We had a great chat. I'll send over the notes. I would love to get your feedback if I let anything out. And then we will come either with a proposal, or we might propose a more extensive discovery, right? So maybe a 3-day on-site or something like that. That's something I like to do as well.
No, they're great tips. And yeah, there will always be some accountability for them. As you say, it's yes, ultimately you're working with the agency to be able to deliver against their goals, but they will definitely have accountability their side. But I think from what you said, it's all about balancing thoughtful discovery, but with subtle authority, because you're listening very closely to the client, but also giving them a preview of the experience of how working together with you would look like.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the questions that you pose matter, right? And how you pose them. So things like, what's motivating this project right now? What was the trigger? What is important for you? What does success look like in 6 or 12 months? I know it's a cheesy question, but it's always good to have that understanding of what they are tracking on. What's blocking you from getting there today, right? And that might not just be your agency delivering the project, but maybe they still need to win over some people internally. Maybe there is pushback from one of the warehouse team because they don't want to deal with a new cutover. And who else is involved in getting this over the line, right? Is it just the e-commerce manager you're talking to, or are there more people needed? Most likely there are, right? The merchandising team might need to buy in and what have you.
For sure. And then after you've had that conversation, you've got the answer to their questions, it's then being really crystal clear with them about the scope, about the timelines and next steps. And I think that the thread that I'm hearing throughout the conversation today is really to try and not have any ambiguity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to say that the pre-sales needs to be a mutual assessment, right? It's not just can we win this, it's should we win this, right? Is this a project that we can deliver on within the criteria set by the client? And I think using Champ or any other framework just helps make it a little bit more easy and structured to approach it. So it helps with a little bit of consistency between the different conversations that you're going to have. So I think it's worth employing one of these methodologies.
For sure. And I think outside of Champ, there are some other tools that you can use, because I do think using the right templates or having experience of templates can help to save time. Just help you either be better prepared or help with a better follow-up. So there are some useful tools that you can start to use inside your business.
Yeah. Absolutely. A couple of the things that I like to use, first of all, Notion, right? If it isn't in Notion, it doesn't exist. I think that one's very important. And then it's not really a tool, but maybe a practice is make sure to block in time, right? To prepare the meeting for the meeting itself, and then also to follow up the meeting. Often you maybe just put in a schedule for the meeting itself and then forgot that you actually need to prepare everything. I think blocking time is very important. I love to use diagrams during meetings, even just to draw them on site. So on site, you can use maybe some sticky notes or a whiteboard. Online, you can use Lucidchart or Miro. I think those are great tools to use. Definitely what you need to have is a meeting recorder, right? And that can be in a Zoom call, you might use one of the 600 note takers. On site, I tend to use my recorder on the phone. I think it's very important. I know it's tempting to just use the AI notes from a meeting. I would still encourage people to go through the whole recording of the meeting, even if it's on like 1.5 speed or something like that. But there's so much that the AI doesn't pick up. And it's worth to just go through and see some minor visual cues or hear the intonation of someone, what frustrates them, what doesn't, right? Because with all these AI tools, I feel that people are getting lazy to some extent. And I think it makes a difference if you could tell the client, yeah, less conversation. I noticed you were getting a little bit passionate when we spoke about this new proposal for a configurator. What happened there, right? I think that is the kind of detail that AI will never pick up on.
No.
And a human can. And I'm just saying this because I don't want AI to take my job, Katie.
But you're completely right. It doesn't pick up on those nuances at all. While you can go back through and reference or pick up something that you've maybe missed, I think, listening back to it first person, especially with the experience that you have, you'll pick up more. I definitely agree with you on tools like Miro. I think they're really brilliant for collaborative sessions, especially if you are doing live scoping. And also, even if you have to not read it word verbatim, but to have a pre-sales checklist. What we're going to do after this show is to drop one in the notes. It's a really great place to start. And of course, you can refine this yourselves, but just having something like a checklist when you go in could prove really helpful. Okay, so to kind of cover up and wrap up, we're going to do a quick fire round now. So what would be one final tip you'd give to an agency that are trying to up their pre-sales game?
Right. So I think first, be curious. Keep asking why to clients, even if it's not specifically towards the technical part of what you're going to deliver. Understand their business, ask why they have certain practices, ask why they behave in a certain way, because the better you understand their business, the better you can serve them.
Completely. Mine would be around that pre-sales calls are conversations. They're not performances. So yes, to have a couple of slides there, but ultimately you're not there to try to impress them. You're trying to understand their business goals, trying to understand their motivations, their requirements. So really go in there, being very open-minded and asking lots of questions.
Right. Love it. So maybe some rapid fire to finish. Last thoughts, Katie?
Yeah. So what would you say if you had one tool for running meetings? What would you go with?
Notion, or alternatively Google Docs, anything but Confluence.
So second, third, fifth, that one.
First thing you ask in a pre-sales meeting.
Definitely what's driving the project. I think getting to the heart fast will then set the tone for how the rest of the meeting goes. And on my side, what would be a red flag to watch out for?
If no one on the client side knows what success looks like, that's trouble. Or if they have wildly different goals that just do not align at all.
Very good. So, thank you so much for tuning in to this first episode of the Adaptive Agency podcast. We really hope this has given you some solid ideas to take into your next client conversation.
And if you like this episode, feel free to share it with your team or drop us a message with your own tips or questions.
Perfect. So next time we're going to go a bit deeper. We're going to be talking about how to qualify leads like a pro so that you can spend less time chasing the wrong projects and more time closing the right ones.
See you then.